We have time for about 2-3 more questions. Okay.
How do you create your characters and how do you choose their names?
The characters really kind of come to me like you would just meet someone on the street. Percy came to me literally kind of in a fever dream. 3 in the morning. I was working 16-hour days, 6 days a week at the Cincinnati Shakespeare Company as an intern. And so I was literally like eating, breathing, drinking, sleeping with Shakespeare every day. And my brain had no more room in it. And yet this little timid little girl edged her way in and said, "Oh yes, but you're going to write my story." And and I literally, I had no time. I said into a voice recorder the next day as I was heading out on a road trip, I said, my life has changed into that voice recorder. I had no idea how much she would change my life, but she did. So she came into me just completely as this sort of revelation. Now, not all the rest of the characters do. A lot of the other characters come from genre tropes. A lot of the other characters come from, well, I need this type of character, I need this type of character, okay, I need the best friend character, okay. And but then they come to me, I acknowledge that they're tropes, but they come to me as people. Alexei is very much a mishmash of many a different brooding Gothic hero or brooding Gothic secondary character that I make into a hero. So, so I feel that there's definitely influences, my favorite characters of all. I mean, I'm big on homage. Some of my favorite elements of different characters will play into, I will take an aspect from this and take an aspect from that. Sometimes real life, I will use aspects of people I know in real life. Things I read about real historical characters. It's one of those things where it's a little mysterious to me because I never quite know. They just sort of arrive. I see characters sitting at a table, and sometimes it's involved with the setting. Sometimes the setting will inform about what characters are in the setting. Sometimes I'll just hear a line of dialogue and it just belongs to someone, and then I figure out the rest as I go. And it is a little mysterious, and it does feel a little bit like I'm opening up to some kind of channel. I really do feel like I must have had a life in Victorian England or Victorian America, and because I'm so connected to that era. So I think I don't know, I think I'm getting transmissions or something sometimes. So from another side, but and I do sort of believe in that stuff, by the way. So I have had actual experiences, paranormal experiences. So I think that there's a lot that's left. I love the mystery of that because it's different every time.
I get the names a lot, like right away. They just come into my head, or I see them.
names, yeah.
Like the names, they come. But the characters, I never really know before I start writing them. I'm sorry, I'm being attacked by bugs. I felt like it was vaguely threatening because it's Leanna's, and I realized it was Holly. Oh, yeah. I never really know until they come into the story how they're going to interact. But the second they appear in their first scene, I know everything about them. I know their backstory, I know their history, I know where they're going, their future, everything. And that's been really strange for me. And if I don't know, then the scene is wrong, and I have to go back. And I've had a couple of surprise characters show up who have changed the course of my series. And one character who was supposed to die didn't die. My publisher said you can't. And I actually did kill him in the penultimate chapter of Secret Prince, and then I went back when I was giving my editor the final chapter, and I said, JK, about penultimate chapter, I'm gonna unkill this guy. So that was a misstep. But yeah, I always know, and I can sense if it's wrong. I feel like I'm writing down some story that I know or that I heard as a child that I can't quite fully remember. And if I say it and I go, no, that's not how it happened, then I have to go back. But yeah. We're all crazy.
The names come along with as I'm getting to know the characters. The names, or sometimes, very rarely does the name come first. But Percy, I knew that came with her. Percy was a nickname for a longer name, which of course the second book gives it away, the title. I fought on that, but whatever. So sometimes the names become utterly critical. Sometimes it's just, oh, they sound like an Elijah, or they sound like a Michael, or they sound like a Rebecca. So I feel like I love, I do love names, but it also has to, written out on the page, it has to look right. Stick with that.
Okay.
Have you ever thought ahead about whether you want your book to have a sequel or not? If you have you accidentally started writing the sequel before you finished the first book?
Yeah, I've written scenes, again, not linear, I've written all over the map. But I knew I'm a series writer. I have a very hard time writing a standalone book. In fact, I've never been able to. Everything always spawns more things. I knew that this was at least a trilogy, and then the fourth book sort of came as a bit of a revelation as I was writing. So yeah, always series books, and always a little non-linear too.
I've always meant to write standalone. Like Nightly was meant to be a standalone, and I suddenly, when my publisher wanted to make a bid, it was Friday, and they said, okay, gotta get down for, no, I'm kidding. They said, hey, oh, sorry, John. It's all right. Saturday comes next and Sunday comes afterward. No, they said, hey, we're going to kind of look at this again on Monday. Can you just have the sequel concept by then? And I was like, what? The sequel concept? What? And so I got massively drunk, and I went on the subway at 3 in the morning, and I wrote down in my little diary, Harry Potter 5 plus smallpox. Yeah.
Emo-pox?
No, smallpox, because I've been reading Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and this made sense in my head, and weirdly, like, I couldn't see where that came from, so I wrote it down really quickly in the pitch, and suddenly I had a series, because I was like, oh my god, they're not going to buy the first one unless it's the second. And I said, all right, well, I guess now it's a trilogy, and apparently it's a quartet, I don't know. But what happened was, right after I was in the middle of, like, editing book 1, you know, I hadn't seen the typeset edits or anything, we were still playing with things. I still had a character whose a name I had put in jokingly as compatriot Knockenbrook, because we finally popped that at the very end. I was like, oh, because I couldn't come up with one as placeholder. I went to Edinburgh on the train because I'm Potter obsessed, and I went and I sat in the cafes where J. Rowling sat in the road, not like the big touristy ones, backwoods ones near the University of Edinburgh. And I had a writing holiday, and I said, this is where I will plot out book 2 for Nightly. And I did, and it was magical. And I did the entire thing on the train from Waverley to King's Cross on the way back. And I was like, that's so cool. So now my dream is to finish writing a series in Balmoral, just because it's completely geeky of me, and why the heck not? But yeah, I'm very surprised that it's a series, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done to write a sequel because I didn't know how. And I was terrified, and it drove me mad. Anyone who knew me while I was writing the sequel can attest to it. I was like not even a person. I was just mumbling about sequels all the time.
I'm actually just going to call on the last 2 people who raised their hands before. Miss, you were next.
I was wondering, do you have any characters looking about who haven't yet found their way into something written, or who you haven't been able to find a space for yet, put their stories out there?
Yeah, I have about 10 unformed novels in my head that things are lurking around, ready, waiting. So I can always count on somebody walking in from the wings to surprise me as I'm writing. So I definitely there's definitely other different tropes and things like that in fiction. Okay, well that character is serving that kind of purpose. I want to have that type of character serve this particular purpose, but I want to put him in my own little lab experiment. I mean that's I am definitely writing original fiction, but it is with genre shout outs. So I feel like there's always iterations of that. I think thematically I revisit some similar themes in my work, so I think that I'll also be exposing similar characters that are somewhat similar, but I'm exposing another facet. So like some of my heroes will still have the dark and brooding thing going on, but I'm going to explore a different facet of what that's all about. So yeah, they're around, lots of them. People to my head is with people.
I wish I could write like dark and brooding. My characters just have a default setting of nerdy. And
I can be nerdy too.
Yes, I've tried that. I'm actually working on that now. I've been for the past 5 years on and off working on a literary novel that now involves a pool that thinks it's Gatsby, and severed heads on Disneyland rides and all sorts of weird things. It's quite cool. But I've been working on it for years on and off, and I keep abandoning it. And I was just so upset because the narrator and the protagonist, I was like, this guy needs this book to happen. I'm so, I don't know what's wrong. And I finally figured it out a couple of months ago that he had like a physical handicap, and so that was very interesting to have like a pretty like sexy kind of hero who had that going on as well. And then I couldn't get the heroine right, and I had to abandon the book again like 2 months ago. And then I realized just like 3 weeks ago what I could do to fix the heroine. And now the book, I'm like 100 pages, I'm like ready to send it out to publishers now. So something that a month ago I was like, man, poor Ezra, like he's just gonna live in my head forever, isn't he? You know, he's like trapped in there. So somebody needs like a basilisk fang to like stab him and he can leak out and be real. And now it's like he gets his own novel, hopefully. So that was nice.
Urban, did you raise your hand before?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is, have you guys tried writing from different perspectives? First person, third person,
Yes.
third person?